Hello again, Hernando here. And we have one more session for all of you to enjoy. We have Nishan moderating from the trenches, privacy engineering pitfalls and successes. So he'll have Lisa Bobbitt and Bindia Mathew on page, and he will be introducing everybody. So thank you all for staying and enjoy.
Thank you all, and thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Bindia, for joining us, and thank you to the audience for being here for us at this summit today. It's been a great summit. We've all learned a ton from each other, made some new friends. So this is going to be a great way to sort of end the day as well. So before we jump in, I would love to introduce myself one last time. Nishan Bhajaria, advisor to Privado, author of Privacy Handbook for Engineers. Bindia, Lisa, want to introduce yourself as well? Bindia, will go first.
Sure. I've worked in privacy ops and privacy compliance at lots of corporations and transitioned to privacy engineering and privacy by design a few years ago. I'm now a director on the board of directors at the Institute of Operational Privacy Design. And I'm also a director, privacy by design at ADP. And all of my views and opinions are my own and do not reflect those of my current employer or any of my previous employers.
What she said. No, in the sense of my own opinions, but I'm Lisa Bobbitt. I'm the principal engineer in our Privacy Center of Excellence at Cisco. And unlike some of your other presenters, I've been at Cisco for a very long time and got involved in privacy from working in the security environment, building in security by design, and looked at the privacy environment and actually learned from what Deborah said. I used the privacy engineering manifesto from Michelle Denety and Jonathan Fox and Michelle's father, and actually was reading it over a holiday and came back and said, I want to do this with our security baseline, but I want to put privacy on top of it. And that was almost 8 years ago. And I haven't even gotten close to being bored with privacy at this point. So looking forward to talking today.
Thank you both. And I love the fact that both of you took different routes to get to privacy engineering, which shows to the audience there is so much need, so much demand, but there is also so much available in terms of resources. So there are a lot of good tutorials, courses, etc. So, but before we get into the details, I want to highlight why this session is one of my favorites, because we have two people who have done the work who can talk about how these things actually operate. How do you make plans? How do you show outcomes? How do you recalibrate? How do you operationalize privacy? So we've talked a lot about privacy as a product, but privacy as an operational reality, something that is hard to do. So before we talk about details, let's ask both of these fine engineers what privacy engineering means to them. So Bindia, how would you, if somebody in your company asked you, somebody who doesn't know privacy engineering, what is it that you do here, like in office space back in 25 years ago? What's your answer?
It's always such a hard question. My parents always ask me that too. What do you do exactly? So whenever I answer that question, I situate myself within the privacy team. I always divide it up between privacy compliance and privacy by design. And privacy engineering falls in privacy by design. It's not point in time kind of exercise, but rather I sit with product teams. I work cross-functionally with legal and with security. And I'm in the development phase of products and applications. And I provide advice and non-functional requirements to the product teams. And I also let the privacy compliance teams know what is coming down the road so that when it's time for them to do a privacy compliance evaluation of a product or an application, they know what to.
And I love the fact that everything you listed in there, Bindia, was so impactful in terms of what people actually need. Like everything you did there means there was a customer within the company who directly benefited from it. And that made their life easier, which means they were then able to pass down that good deed to the end customer who pays for our salaries, right? So I love the fact that you make privacy engineering so practical, because privacy engineering is not this theoretical, esoteric thing that only some people care about. We have to make it accessible and beneficial to the business. So I love enumeration. Lisa, over to you.
We're in the same type of environment as we were over in our security and trust organization when I first started. We have now been moved over to legal, but we are the center of excellence, meaning we have both our privacy by design team, our privacy engineering team, and our privacy legal team. We work together as a triad to help both our run the business teams, our enterprise teams, as well as all of our services and all of our offers. And what we do is, as Minnie said, we go and work with the teams, but we also look at what they're doing because not one size fits all. So what we have done is actually taken all the standards, all of the regulations, built them into our policies. Then we take those policies and make them controls, and we build them into something that each of our teams can look at and say, I need to do that. I need to minimize data, or I need to actually give you consent, or I need to the different pieces and parts of privacy, and think about the risk of that, not doing that, and then putting it into their product sets as controls with both recommendations on how to implement and then how to verify. Because we can't just say we did it. We have to say we did it and we can prove it. So trust, but verify it with each of the things that we work through it. And we do that on an agile baseline with our engineering teams. We use engineering terminology. We help them understand what we're trying to do, but we always know it's a risk-based decision. It's not a yes or no. It's always, here's your environment. Here's what we think you need to do. Let's de-risk it for the personal side of the house. And that's actually allowed us to build our baseline into not just the pure personal data, but with the new AI regulations. I'm part of the responsible AI team as the privacy person there, and help making sure that we're taking care of both privacy and fairness for people as we're looking at these things. So we actually have the security, the privacy, and this baseline of AI, responsible AI, that we all work together and we work with them. Many of my engineers at first go, why are you asking me all these questions? But over time, they come back with their questions because they have specific needs given their market space.
I'm going to jump on something Lisa said. You talked about building central controls. You take policies and convert them into controls. Now, Cisco has a pretty long pedigree, and Michelle Dennedy used to work at Cisco, and I learned privacy by reading her book as well. How would you recommend people start that conversion of policies to controls when they don't have a central privacy team or when they don't have their awareness? How would you get that going?
We started kind of in that same mode because, it was just 3 or 4 of us when we first started. It was our CPO and 2 of us, and then 3 of us. And now we're a nice size, a much larger team, but we're still a very small team of less than 20 people for the full company, because we do want that data to be out. So if you're a new environment, you want to understand, where's your market? What are you doing in that market? And how does running your personal data and processing personal data and collecting personal data going to affect your opportunity to be trustworthy to your end users? And so what we tend to do is go back and look at things like GDPR, look at some of the ones that kind of set the highest bar and say, what do we need to do to actually think about being able to sell in that market? Because not everyone has the same level of policy. So we want to take those, look at them and say, okay, yes, we need to do an assessment. Yes, we need to be transparent. Yes, we need, and just start putting in how do we do those things with your baseline, be it a router that's underneath the back door and no one's ever seen it behind the wall, all the way to WebEx, which has this full set of personal interaction when we're looking at, the blur and the noise reduction and all of the other pieces that represent me in a space of a collaboration. So for us, it's been very much a look at, understand what is needed to make sure the trust is built, and then build in those controls. So we are very focused on not trying to over engineer it, but engineer it to the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
And that was great. Bindia, what do you want to add to that?
I guess the only thing, so you're asking how we come up with controls.
Yeah, like how it started building these controls at a place where that awareness, funding, resourcing may not exist yet.
So with the teams I worked at, because, privacy typically sits in legal or sits in security, I've always come across, there have been a ton of controls already, whether it comes from security that kind of leans into privacy, or whether it comes from legal, where they fully have dissected the GDPR, the CCPA, CPRA, all of that. And they have certain requirements, like you must do this. It's outcomes based, but instead of focusing on those controls that come from policies or regulations, what I focus more on is controls that come from norms, from privacy norms, right? So it's a lot of, if you're looking at geolocation data, would the user expect you to collect this data to this level of granularity within this context? And how long would they expect you to keep it? Would they expect you to keep it for a very long time, track them over time, or override it? Or do they expect you to collect this data even when the app is not in use? So different considerations like that. So it's not so much controls that are derived from regulations, but rather controls that just come from enforcing norms, I think.
And I would add to that exactly in that, and making that work in your space, but also helping the engineering teams understand what do these terms mean. Like, what does minimization really mean? What does de-identification really mean? Because there's a lot of words in policy and a lot of words in standards that what does that mean to their space, and help them understand how they can actually implement those things. When we first started, I had the biggest problem trying to explain to engineers even what personal data was, because they did not want to think of your email address or your IP address as personal. But if it's attached to your laptop or to your phone, it's personal for the time you're using it. So you have to help them in this environment. And when you're in a networking company like we are, that becomes really like, wait, what do you mean I have to treat that like personal data? I'm like, well, I don't need the printer be personal data, but I need my laptop to be personal because it knows my location. It knows what I'm doing. It's capturing my information. I need you to treat that address as it's Lisa's address. And so helping people understand that it is situational was also a big piece of the training that became part of what we are. I now, like I said, is more rolled back after these many years of, I think you're wrong, Lisa. I think this is personal. I'm like, yeah, you're almost right, but we don't really need to worry too much about that. That's not too dangerous if you capture my email address. But do treat it with respect, but don't share it. No, don't sell it to someone else, but you don't have to worry so much about encrypting my email address if I gave it to you. But I do need you to be careful with my sensitive data. So we have that, again, that situational baseline for this environment.
Awesome. And it brings my favorite question to light, which is how do you know this is working? Because both of you have described processes and systems and tools that often will take a bit of time to show the benefit, right? Like it's almost like it's easier to sort of give credit to somebody who comes in and fixes things, but it's hard to give credit to somebody who made things so well that they didn't need fixing, right? So how do you know, how do you prove to yourself and to others in the company that this is actually working, even if all the data isn't there? You want to go first, Bindia?
I can, they're the program wide. There's like a program wide example. For example, like, given repeated privacy by design assessments, if you're constantly telling people, hey, treat data in this way. Like, for example, if you're developing an app and, you explain that, given the user experience, this has to be on this page and they can't move past it until they read through all of this and they sign. There has to be a separate consent for each thing. Once you've explained that a few times, you've made that a non-functional requirement, you've institutionalized it in policies or standards. The fact that it doesn't come up again, the fact that it's automatic, the fact that a product team that you've never worked with knows that and has already built it in is evidence of that. But how do you demonstrate that? It's really hard. It's almost like the lack of questions or pushback or having to go through things that used to be an issue before and required a lot of explanation and discussion and back and forth are no longer that. That's the proof. But it's something that's the value of it is really difficult to show because you're trying to show, hey, this doesn't exist anymore, which means I am successful.
Thank you. That was great. Lisa?
I think the example that I like to use when we first started, we had no way of letting customers know exactly what we were doing with their data. We didn't have transparency. And one of the first things our team set up was the privacy data sheet that we have on our trust center. And we did it with with WebEx first, because it was one of our biggest users of personal data with our customers, because we are a B2B, but that one does interact with a lot of people. And to go through that process was very painful the first time because everyone was trying to learn what it means. These days, they come and they'll go, we need to add this information because this is what customers need to know about what we're doing with their personal data. So we've actually gotten more data and we're like, no, we have to keep it concise. No, they need to know this information. So they're actually pushing the transparency versus us having to pull it out of them. They're pushing it up because their customers come to them and say, this really makes a difference in what's making a decision on what to do with do I want this function or not? Do I need this function or not for my space that I'm working in? So they're the kind of things that we have seen with privacy, is that having that ability to see something substantial at the end of the picture keeps the assessment by the design at the beginning, all of the work, the checking, the monitoring that goes on, because they have a piece of documentation that says this is what they have done. It's very clear to them what is going on. And that has made the biggest difference for us with our teams, both our services team as well as our offers team. On the enterprise side, we've had to actually do a lot more interaction because we work with a lot more third parties. So we have, we've had some trip ups sometimes in the very beginning of, wait a minute, where did you send my data? And now they actually come and go, we want to do this, but we're concerned about where that data is going to go. So help us figure out how to put controls around it. We need the value, but we need to de-risk it. So again, we get a lot of people that you don't really expect to come and ask you these questions to start. So that's kind of how we've made our check marks of differences over the 7 years we've been doing this as a corporate group. Each team was doing their own thing, but now we're doing it at a corporate level.
That is very sage advice. So on the flip side, when you start something like this, you may have pitfalls, difficulties, resistance, or incomplete adoption, incomplete alignment between the legal and the engineering team. Like, there are a number of things that go wrong in small ways. And sometimes they go wrong in very visible ways when the legal team and the eng team have different understanding of what needs to happen to the data. So how do you identify what is a one-time issue versus something that might be structurally wrong with the program? Like, how do you first convince yourself that is a big deal or not a big deal? How do you then message that to the board, not necessarily the board of directors, but like the C-suite? How do you sort of get that truth for yourself, and how do you create messaging around it? So we'd love to hear your talk. Lisa?
Well, we use our PIA as our privacy by design because we do it at the very beginning and make them work with us throughout the process. So we can usually see where there's going to be, given the market they're in, given the function they're adding, given the data they're using, where the risk may be in that space. We may think it's a little higher at the beginning, but as they build in more controls, we bring that risk down. If it is something that is going to harm something because of sensitive personal data, we're much more focused on that. And we're, like things like biometrics and things that we might be using to build up, say, a security baseline or a observability baseline. And with those things, what we have to do is stop and go, okay, is this work? It's definitely a balancing of the risk against the reward. And is it going to meet like our customers, where are customers who are going to use it? Will we meet their policies? I mean, one example we had when I first started was as we were going to roll out things into shopping malls where you walked in and when you walked in, they wanted to be able to link to your phone to give you the sales opportunities here in the mall. And we had to go, no, you can't do this because in Germany, you can't connect to them. You can't take their IP address until you have given consent. And they were like, oh, no, we can. And then they went and did one test and found out they had to go back and redo their work. So, again, our teams balance with us, but we tried to explain it from that viewpoint forward. We always had that example and other teams were like, yeah, okay, now we get it. We don't want to lose market. Because it comes back to this is an opportunity to make money at what we're doing. We want to make sure we still meet their requirements. And they're the kind of examples that we get to use as not to do these things. Or then the flip side is what you can do to make customers happy. And like I said, things like the transparency has cut some of our sales opportunities, taking months to get to them to weeks because they have the information. They don't have to keep coming back to every product and ask and ask and ask. They have that information at their fingertips when they're trying to make a decision. So it works, we can show positives and negatives in those environments with the teams.
And my assumption, Lisa, is that you do this with metrics, you do this with reporting. the hope would be to not create more noise than required, but
Yeah,
leveraging.
we try very hard not to put any more noise in the workflow. Is like I said, we go and we work with them. We have tooling that helps us stay in touch with them without having to go and make meeting after meeting after meeting with them. And when we also work with both their product legal team, as well as the engineering team, as well as all of the testing teams to make sure we're all aligned. So we look across the life cycle operationally of what's going on to make sure that we don't drop the ball.
And I think all of what you described takes a bit of time and effort, Lisa. So it's all the more important to get it right once or twice and then use that template unless something
Yeah.
is really off.
You look for your most risky part of your company, right? You look for the place that data is being used, personal data is being used in a way that may bring high risk to what you're doing. Like I said, we looked at WebEx first because that was our collab tool that said, this is where we really have most personal data in what we're doing. Same thing over in our enterprise side of the house. We looked at our human resources teams, right? Because that's where the most data was. We spent time with them first, got our strength in place, and then was able to just keep using that baseline to build across the whole company. And so now we do things with, M&A, and we do things with third parties, and we do everything, but we couldn't have done it at the beginning because we had to understand our space as well as they had to understand privacy. So we had to come together as a team to make this work.
Bindia, over to you. Give us some perspective on how you catch things when they're not working well. Hopefully, catch them before the impact blast radius goes too far. So, how would you do that? Basically, the same question I asked Lisa.
Yeah, I think it's echoing what Lisa said in terms of working with like legal teams and product teams working together. So, for example, the privacy by design, we're not necessarily in there at the very ideation phase, but right afterwards. That is when privacy by design comes, and you're going to catch any kind of deviation between what legal wants and what product and engineering want to do. If you're there early enough, to communicate between the two to say, hey, this is legal's perspective. And from a product perspective, I don't know if you can even move forward with this type of engineering unless you implement these guardrails. Or, you present it to legal as, look, this is what they want to do. These are the risks that are involved, and they're willing to accept the risks. Well, what's your viewpoint on it? And so nobody's surprised. There's no deviation in philosophy between what legal is allowing and what product wants to do. It doesn't go very far because privacy by design is there early enough to bridge whatever gap between the two might arise.
Awesome. Which brings me to this idea here where historically the legal team has had to hold the bag and run around and say, oh my goodness, do this before something bad happens, right? And I think one of the benefits of privacy engineering as a discipline is that you can work with the legal team on the one side, keep them reassured that somebody is on it so they don't end up paying too many engineers. I'm not blaming the legal team at all. It's like it's their job to de-risk the company. And if they don't have access to eng talent that understands privacy, they have no choice but to escalate. But can you, both of you, speak to the fact that your presence in the company and your work means fewer escalations, less thrash, less noise? And I want to sort of make this point because I want the attorneys out there to understand that they can leverage you as a way to work with the business and not create too many email chains or too many Slack messages. So, Lisa, want to speak to that, Lisa?
Yes. We definitely work very closely with the engineering teams, and we are our legal team's kind of ambassadors. And then when we see something, we bring in product legal or we bring in privacy legal. We bring in the right mixture of who can help us make a good decision for the company, because none of us can say yes or no. We will escalate up to someone who can if we really get to a point we can't agree. But we've really never had too many of this, because when we start looking at it, we come up with solutions, engineering solutions, legal solutions, operational solutions to actually answer that. I mean, sometimes my engineers will say, well, we don't have time to do this technically. So we'll go, well, is there a process we can wrap around it right now so that we can help move it forward? And so their operational team will go, oh yeah, we can do this for this many months with this type of resource. And so we work the whole system for that minimized. And again, we don't go to zero. I mean, risk is always there, but we try to minimize those high risks. And then the next time they come through as a new iteration, they have those requirements, they have the opportunity to put them in earlier in their space, and they can move forward. Like I said, if there's one that's very high, we will escalate up. And we have had some things stop because of going up to the general manager for a team or going up to the legal side of the house if we have to. But it's usually managed at our level because we're working together. We're not the police. We are part of this solution team to get things through so that it can get out to market, or internally will support us as a company. So they see us as a colleague, not as the people who stop things for us at the company.
Thank you, Lisa. Bindia, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's non-functional requirements, first of all. We have a set of those, and the privacy legal team can trust that these non-functional requirements at a baseline are going to satisfy or whatever regulatory requirements are out there. With some nuances and where they don't cover everything, we'll bring in the privacy legal team or the product legal team as needed. And so that results in fewer and fewer escalations as these non-functional requirements become the DNA of product development. And where there are escalations, where something is needed, those are usually edge cases or really innovative cases. And in those cases, the legal team should be brought in, right, to be made aware. And then it's our role I kind of see it as making the legal team aware, but also presenting them with options, right, that you talk with the engineers about. So maybe before you even get into like privacy enhancing tech, you can get into like privacy techniques. Like perhaps we can abstract here, perhaps we can obfuscate here. And, so you can bring them these innovative or edge cases along with solutions that would reduce risk to an acceptable level, perhaps, for the business and for the legal team.
And I love the phrase DNA of product development. So hopefully Hernando's taking note. I love these sound bites. We talk about privacy by design, but that is not always contemporary. But I think DNA of product development has become sort of the new mantra here. So thank you for that soundbite. Yeah. So we're down to our last 10 minutes or so. I would love to sort of understand from both of you, in the last 6 to 9 to 12 months, what has surprised you the most? Like, what was, with all the experience both of you bring to the table, I think very little surprises you anymore, but like, I'm sure there must be something that made you wonder, I didn't know that. I didn't see that coming. So Lisa, you want to go first? Like, what was something that happened? It could be in your job, in the industry at large. What has surprised you in the last 6 to 12 months?
Well, with the work that I've been doing with responsible AI, the whole concept of the viewpoint that we could de-identify work, we could de-identify personal data. Now that I can bring it from so many different sources data, and now maybe you could re-identify it because I'm not keeping it siloed, has been not such a surprise to me, but a huge hole, because a lot of the work that we had done when each team was doing their own thing, we felt like we had a trust center around them. They were in a trusted space, but with this need for data from everywhere, that has been one of the areas that I've been really pushing in our organization. The other piece that's really interesting in this space is that I am now working very closely with our human rights team, and things that I need to keep safe for a person are the same characteristics they want to look at to make sure bias is not happening. And so we're having to balance out where that risk plays in these new, especially in a lot of these automatic decisions or consequential decisions that are being made with some of the AI ML work that's going on. So great new opportunities for all of us. You can't get bored.
Definitely. We get a lot of things in this profession, but board is not one of them. Bindia, over to you.
I was going to say AI too, but I think everybody thinks it's AI. And so I'm going to, I guess, step away from that and say maybe one thing that I did not expect to see, just based on how I think of privacy engineering and privacy by design, is codification, right? Or standardization. I think of this again as enforcing norms, institutionalizing like customer privacy norms and expectations. And so I didn't expect for standards to come out like ISO 31700 or the IOPD standard on privacy by design to say, hey, here we're going to codify what it means for your organization to say that you're actually employing privacy by design. here are requirements, here are the standards that if you meet these, then you can actually say that. It's always it without this codification and standardization, privacy by design has always seemed like the most cutting edge, or privacy engineering has always seemed like the most cutting edge, that the most advanced companies that really care about user privacy, individual privacy, they take it as like a cherry on top and on top kind of function. But now with standardization and codification, you see more and more how it's expected. And because it's expected, you have to be able to meet certain requirements in order to even be able to say as an organization that you do it. So I guess in that sense, a pleasant surprise in the last 6 months.
We're down to our last question, folks, and I want to make this about the next generation of privacy engineers. So there are people in this audience, and then there are people elsewhere getting into the profession, or there are people who, like me, became privacy engineers by default and nobody else is there to help them out, right? How would you tell them to get ready for this? Like, they're entering the profession, they're coming in at a pretty critical time. On the one side, security and privacy are very important, but on the other side, there's financial constraints, efficiency cuts, etc. Right? So in this extremely challenging environment, how do you learn the skill? How do you start a program? What advice would you give to the next generation? So you want to go first, Bindia?
Yeah. I guess become a part of a community. One thing that I was a little bit surprised about is in every organization, unless you're part of a huge privacy engineering team, which the organizations I've worked at, that hasn't been the case. It is a little bit lonely within the organization, right? I mean, because you have ideas, you have techniques that you want to put out or test out, or ideas that you just want to talk through. And, you can talk with your privacy legal colleagues, your product legal colleagues, your colleagues in security, or your product teams. But that intersection of where you sit within an organization, it's typically just a few people. Sometimes it's just one person. And so to be able to really see what's going on, what's out there, I would say become a part of a community where those things are discussed regularly. I don't know if that's the most practical advice in terms of like starting a program, but I think starting on your journey in privacy engineering or privacy by design is become part of a community. That's what I would say.
Great sales advice. Lisa, over to you.
That would be my first step, is to find other people. But I mean, part of it is just getting very excited that you own your own personal data. Really believe in that. I mean, buy into that, a baseline that says it's valuable. Your information is valuable and you want to protect it. You want to help other people protect theirs and really get in. I mean, one thing for me, for privacy, I will never not want to be involved in privacy because I believe it protects us as people. And so then I want to turn it around and say, well, how do I do that? And yes, there's training. There's training out in the market. There's plenty of YouTubes and all sorts of things to look. There are blogs. Everyone's got good books out there. It's and finding your community, as Bindia was saying, it's really important to find other people so you don't just are making a voice alone in the wind, but that you're working with lots of people who look at it very differently to make this difference. And so I truly believe we all own privacy. It doesn't matter if I'm a privacy engineer or if I'm an engineer who's working on something, all of us own that. And helping infect the rest of the company that way is such an important piece to me. I want them to have a privacy pandemic. I want them to make this really catching to them. And, you see it, but you also, because there's always changing in new people, and especially people coming in new to either your company or new to privacy, it's always so exciting to work with them and help them understand, find the pointers, find the training, but also just let them starting believing that privacy is so important. And it's going to become more and more important as we live in this digital environment.
Awesome. Those were great inside ideas. And we have a couple of minutes still. So anything that people should absolutely not do. So the last question is about what people should do. Are there any things that you have learned that maybe you made a mistake because you didn't know better at the time? Are there things caution people, maybe each we can take a minute each and just tell me, what should you avoid if you're in this profession right now? Oh, Lisa, I'll let you. Lisa.
Okay. I was just going to say, I would avoid thinking I understand it all. After I've just read, read GDPR, because the thing is that it is not a yes, no answer. It's always it depends. And because you've got the opportunity to continue to learn, you get to a first level and you think, I got it, and you don't. It's like anything else in engineering today. Everything's brand new and we keep constantly learning new technologies, new ways to do things. And this is where I think privacy is got that advantage that you can't get bored, but you also can't stand back and say, I did that 7 years ago and I'm done. So I think it's always an opportunity for us to step back and realize that we don't want to lose that.
Thank you, Lisa. Bindia, a minute or two of your time.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's fitting talking about pitfalls. Don't alienate any other function. You're working with legal, you're working with security, you're working with product teams, but no one group has it all, including privacy budgets, including the privacy engineers. And so, every time I talk to a different area, I think, oh, that should be a requirement. Let me write that down. You're getting information and support, honestly, from all groups, whether it seems like support or not. There might be quite a bit of pushback, but just look at it as an opportunity to win over eventually some more supporters. So I guess that would be it. Just try really hard not to alienate any one function.
That is sage advice for today, for tomorrow, and for the rest of time. Thank you both so much. Thank you again for attending the summit, for answering these questions, and for giving the audience your perspectives. I think we all benefit from it. Thank you so much. Fernando, over to you for the community as well.
Well, thank you again, Nishan. Really appreciate it. Great session. Thanks for the insights. It's been a really great day.